Today, we are working on my solid axle swapped Toyota Tacoma. This is a 2010 Tacoma with a 2016 and newer front clip, which is why it looks like a third gen. It is sitting on Super Duty axles and has 40-inch tires. But it has problems. If we hit the compressor for the front locker, it did what it was supposed to do. It builds pressure and it kicks off. But if we hit the front locker, it's supposed to do the same thing. It's supposed to build pressure and then kick off the compressor. But obviously there's some sort of leak because the compressor just runs forever and we don't have any front lock. And not only does the front locker not work, if I hit the rear locker, well, you can't tell from in the cab, but it's an E-locker, and when I hit that, the rear end's supposed to lock, and it doesn't. I think maybe the wires inside the diff maybe got chewed up a bit from the ring gear or something, but I don't know. So obviously in today's video, we're gonna rip apart the diffs. I think we'll start with the front end. Let's get this thing all pulled apart, service, make sure everything's still good up there, fix that locker, then we'll move on to the back. Something else that I kind of want to tackle while I'm in here is, as you can see, there's a good bit of rust on this thing just from like daily driving it since I built the truck. The heim joints all kind of look nasty, and I think that's caused this truck to have all sorts of weird squeaks driving it around town. So for all the steel parts like the steering and links and stuff, I'm for sure gonna sand them down, give it all a fresh coat of paint. But the heim joints, I'm not sure. I'm gonna try to de-rust them somehow, and then obviously give them all a nice fresh coat of grease. So I'm gonna start by pulling the tie rod off and then the diff cover so that we can drain all of the gear oil. Rust is literally holding his heim joint in there and steering it while I'm pulling the tire. There we go. There we go. There. Tie rod free. Well, we're off to a good start. The taking the steering out was way harder than I expected it to be. That's a good thing. I ended up actually having to cut the bolt off this side because the nut would not budge. It was welded on. Even with like my biggest impact possible, I just didn't go. Now, before I could pull anything else apart, we gotta drain the oil, which of course uses a bunch of 12-point bolts, and the only 12 points I have are on wrenches. So this will take a couple minutes. There we go. Looks like there was a fair bit of water in the diff, because I'm looking at the breather here and I never ran anything off that up into the engine bay. Good job, Clinton. Ha, found the problem. At least it's obvious. That is supposed to be attached up here. Another observation is if we look at the copper wire right there, it definitely got wore out on this bolt head here. We got to replace this copper line and obviously be a lot more careful about its placement. Oh, it got chewed here too. Oh, you could see like copper markings on the ring gear itself. So I decided before I moved on that I would do some testing, and I cut the copper line off here and just attached the plastic line straight to here just so that I can test the locker. And now that this guy is attached here, I have locked the hub on this side. So in theory, if I spin the pinion, this guy should spin and this guy should stay still. So in theory, I should be able to go into the cab, hit the locker, and I shouldn't be able to spin either side because this hub is locked and this tire is on the ground. So yeah, let's test it out. Key on, compressor, and Front lock. The compressor stopped when it hit the locker, so that should be good news. We are locked. That means the locker is functioning and there's no leaks from this point back. So the locker unit itself is fine. So I think I might try to repair this without pulling the whole diff apart. I might be able to get another piece of copper line and just coupler it together on the end of this guy inside the diff. So I went around town trying to find a replacement copper tube that was the same size, but it turns out the copper tube that ARB or TRE uses in their lockers is a uncommon size. So I had to jump up a size in order to make it work. They had a tubing size smaller and they had a tubing size bigger than what they used. So I made an adapter by essentially cutting down one of these couplers right in half, drilling out the center, pushing the old copper line in, and then using some solder and flux to fill in the back and seal it. So it's all one piece, which now I could use to connect the new line. I can bend this guy down to there, down here, and I want to push this way to the bottom and out of the way this time. Here's what we got going on. We got this guy, which now has a permanent piece of copper, the right size, soldered to it, ready to drop in. And I'm hoping with that little bend on there, we can thread it into the diff. Okay, and we can. And from here, we've got yet another coupler to add inside the differential to connect both of those lines. I know this isn't ideal to have multiple connections because that adds just more possible points of failure. But at this point, I'm just kind of working with what I got. And you know what? This will definitely work. So I'm going to pull this guy out, add a bit of Teflon tape to it, and make this connection permanent. Well, it was quite a bit of a workaround, but we got her dialed. After I got the plastic line attached, I went into the cab, hit the button, built pressure, and it's been sitting under pressure and locked for the last like 15 minutes or so. I just want to keep it under pressure, make sure that we don't have any leaks before I like button anything up, but it's looking good. So I think before I put the cover back on or the steering back together, I'm gonna take a wire wheel, clean up the diff, and give it a fresh coat of paint because, well, it needs it. Yesterday I finished off the day by getting the axle housing itself all painted and looking fresh again. Also, while I was in there and didn't want to forget, I added a diff breather so we shouldn't be getting moisture inside the diff anymore. But today the goal is to do the same thing we did with the axle housing. Come in here with the wire wheel, clean all of the rust off of the frame and suspension components and steering arms and stuff like that. Make it all look nice and fresh and pretty again. Well, I was about to move on to the other side, but this paint's still really wet and it decided to snow. I guess today's a wash. I'm gonna go inside the shop, paint the steering arms, and then, well, I'll see you tomorrow. My trick for knocking all of the rust off the heim joints is simple. All I'm doing is soaking them in vinegar. So for example, let's grab this misalignment that's been soaking in vinegar for about 24 hours. Then I just use a wire brush here and all that rust just kind of falls off of it. Give her a good wipe, and bam! It's like brand new. Today sure seems like a better day to be working on trucks outside, so here we are. We're now working on the other side of the axle, but on this side, we're not just scuffing it up and painting it, because there is a couple of modifications that I want to make to the steering arm before I put it all back together. These are TMR weld-on high steer arms for the Dana 60. And with this specific steering setup, I have to run the Heim joint on top of it for the drag link, which has worked for years. But as you can imagine, with the Heim joint sitting on top and just the bolt going through, it's not nearly as strong as it could be. Right now, that would put it in a single shear situation. If I put a plate on top and weld it down, that would make it a double shear, and it would make it a ton stronger. Also, I never had anything filling the void in between the steering arms here. So as you tighten down on the Heim joint, there's nothing really stopping this bracket from collapsing other than the other Heim joint up here. So I think to fix that, I'm just gonna weld a tube to the inside as well. But for now, we get to play with the arc droid and figure out some sort of double shear situation. Alright, now that we are double sheared and have our little spacer in here, time for the old sander down and paint, which you guys saw me do the other side. So in this case, we're just gonna go like that. And it's all painted. We got lower link painted, upper link painted, frame painted, all of this goodness painted. And then it decided to pick up wind and blow dirt and dust all over my fresh paint. So it's a little textured. So next we're going to put the diff cover back on, steering back together, and then the front end is done. I really thought that we'd have enough time this week to do both the front end and the rear end. But between derusting all of the behind joints in vinegar and waiting for paint to dry and snow to melt, here we are. So you guys will have to wait for a future video for me to tackle the rear end. And speaking of the rear end, we've got some more upgrades coming, so make sure you guys subscribe because you don't want to miss it.